The morning light filtered through the hospital curtains exactly as I remembered it would. October 15th, 2023, 7:42 a.m. The same cheap digital clock on the nightstand, the same antiseptic smell, the same scratchy hospital gown, but this time I could feel my legs. I flexed my toes beneath the thin blanket, a sensation that should have filled me with overwhelming joy. Instead, I felt only cold satisfaction, the kind that comes when you've been given a weapon you know exactly how to use. "Halena! Oh, you're awake!" My stepmother Victoria swept into the room with practiced concern, her designer handbag clutched against her chest. Behind her, my stepsister Melody lingered in the doorway, all wide eyes and trembling lip. If I hadn't lived through this exact moment before, I might have been fooled. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" Victoria perched on the edge of my bed, her manicured hand reaching for mine. "The doctors said you might be confused when you woke up. You've been unconscious for 3 days, since the accident. Accident. In my previous life, I had believed it was an accident. I had spent months in this bed, paralyzed from the waist down, trusting their tears and promises, trusting them to handle my college applications, my inheritance paperwork, my entire future. I had been such a fool. "I remember," I said quietly, watching Victoria's face. "I remember falling down the stairs." Relief flickered across her features. Thank goodness. The doctors weren't sure about memory issues. But I remembered far more than the fall. I remembered how Victoria had convinced father to sign power of attorney over to her, how my acceptance letter to Harvard Medical School had mysteriously been declined, with Melody taking my place. How my mother's inheritance had somehow been transferred to fund Melody's education and Victoria's business venture. Most of all, I remembered the day I discovered the truth. 3 months into my supposed paralysis, I had overheard them arguing in the corridor. "The drug should have worn off weeks ago," Victoria had hissed. "Dr. Whitmore promised the paralysis would be permanent." "Maybe we didn't give her enough," Melody had whispered back. "What if she tries to walk?" "She won't. She trusts us completely. Besides, even if the physical effects fade, the psychological trauma will keep her bedridden. Dr. Whitmore, Victoria's longtime friend and secret lover, who had access to experimental neurotoxins through his research lab. The man who had been slowly poisoning me with injections disguised as pain medication. They had orchestrated my fall, then systematically destroyed my future while I lay helpless. In my first life, I died in this same hospital bed 2 years later, still believing I was broken. But now, with death's wisdom and a second chance, I understood exactly what needed to be done. "Dr. Whitmore should be making his rounds soon," Victoria continued. "He's been personally overseeing your treatment." "How thoughtful," I murmured, letting gratitude colour my voice. "And, Melody, you've been here every day?" My stepsister stepped forward, tears glistening in her green eyes. "I've barely left your side. When you fell, there was so much blood, and you weren't moving." She broke off with a sob that would have won her an Oscar. I remembered this performance. Every word, every gesture, every calculated tear. "Thank you," I said, reaching out to squeeze her hand. "Both of you. I don't know what I would do without my family." The irony tasted bitter, but they heard only what they wanted to hear. Victoria's shoulders relaxed, and Melody's smile became genuine. The smile of someone who believed they had gotten away with murder. "We should let you rest," Victoria said, standing. "Dr. Whitmore will want to run tests, check your reflexes. Physical therapy is scheduled for this afternoon." Physical therapy that would never work because they would ensure my paralysis continued. More injections, more lies, more systematic destruction. Except this time I was ready. "Actually," I said, keeping my tone hopeful, "I'd like to try moving my legs now, just to see if there's any sensation." Victoria's eyes flickered with panic before she forced another smile. "Oh, sweetheart, you shouldn't get your hopes up too quickly. These things take time." "Of course," I agreed easily. "I just thought, well, I can feel some tingling." This was a lie. I could feel everything perfectly, but they couldn't know that yet. "Tingling is a good sign," Melody said quickly. "Isn't it, Mum?" Victoria's smile tightened. "We shouldn't make assumptions. False hope can be more damaging than realistic expectations. Don't expect to ever walk again. Don't expect to ever leave this bed. Don't expect anything except the slow death they had planned." "You're right," I said, settling back with resigned acceptance. "I'll be patient." They left, promising to return with lunch. The moment the door closed, I threw back the covers and swung my legs over the side. The tile floor was cold beneath my feet, but I could feel every inch of it. I was whole, I was free, and I had work to do. I made my way to the closet where Victoria had stored my belongings. Hidden behind textbooks was my phone. They had kept it charged to maintain the illusion of caring. I powered it on and began scrolling through missed messages. There it was, the acceptance letter from Harvard Medical School, dated 3 weeks before my accident. Victoria had told me it had been rejected due to my hospitalization, but here was proof. Not only had I been accepted, but they had been trying to reach me about enrollment deadlines. More digging revealed the scope of their betrayal. My mother's inheritance had been transferred to something called the Winters Family Trust, a financial instrument that didn't exist in any legal database. My college fund, savings account, even my mother's small investment portfolio, all quietly moved while I lay unconscious. Most damning were text messages between Victoria and someone listed as DW. Dr. Whitmore. Victoria. "She's starting to ask questions about the numbness. How much longer?" DW. "The psychological dependency is more important than physical paralysis now. Keep her isolated, grateful. I can maintain injections for 6 months before anyone gets suspicious." Victoria. "And the inheritance paperwork?" DW. "Already processed. By the time she realizes, if she ever does, it will be too late to prove anything." My hand shook as I screenshot each message, forwarding them to a secure email account. In my previous life, I had died never knowing about these communications. Now they would be my weapons. A soft knock made me freeze. I quickly returned to bed, arranging myself in the helpless position they expected. "Halena." Dr. Whitmore's voice was warm and professional. "May I come in?" He entered with his usual confidence. Tall, distinguished, with silver hair and kind eyes that had fooled me completely before. Behind him came a nurse with a cart of medical supplies. "How are you feeling today?" he asked, pulling up a chair. "Victoria tells me you're experiencing some sensation. That's encouraging." "Just a little tingling," I said hopefully. "Does it mean I might walk again?" His expression grew carefully neutral. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Spinal injuries are complex, but any sensation is indeed positive." He began his examination, testing my reflexes. I forced myself to remain still when he touched my legs, even though every instinct screamed at me to pull away from his poisonous hands. "I'm going to give you an injection for the pain," he said, preparing a syringe. "This should help with discomfort and promote healing." The same injection that had kept me paralyzed and compliant. I watched him draw the clear liquid, knowing exactly what it contained. "Actually," I said, letting my voice shake slightly, "I'm feeling quite well today. Maybe I don't need it." Dr. Whitmore's hand paused. "Pain management is crucial for proper healing, Halena. Even without current discomfort, inflammation can build up and impede recovery." "But what if the medication is interfering with my sensation? What if it's preventing me from feeling my legs properly?" His smile became strained. "These medications are carefully calibrated They won't interfere with legitimate nerve function. Legitimate nerve function? As opposed to the artificial paralysis he had been maintaining. I suppose you know best, I said with a sigh, extending my arm. I trust you completely, Dr. Whitmore. The needle slid into my vein. I felt the familiar burn of chemicals entering my bloodstream, the same sensation that had marked each day's helplessness in my previous life. But this time, I was prepared. I had palmed a small vial of activated charcoal, stolen from the nurse's station. The moment they left, I would swallow it. The charcoal would absorb most of the neurotoxin before it could take full effect. Rest now, Dr. Whitmore said, patting my hand with false kindness. I'll check on you this evening. As soon as they were gone, I swallowed the charcoal and settled in to wait. Within an hour, I felt familiar heaviness trying to settle into my limbs. But it was muted, manageable. I would have perhaps 6 hours of limited mobility before the next injection. 6 hours to begin my revenge. Victoria and Melody returned that afternoon with flowers and concerned expressions. They made small talk about school and friends, carefully avoiding college applications or financial matters. I've been thinking about what comes next, I said during a lull. When I get better, I mean. Let's focus on recovery first, Victoria said quickly. There's plenty of time for the future. But I had plans. College applications, career goals. I know everything is different now, but I'd still like to try. They exchanged a look that lasted too long. Of course, sweetheart, Victoria said. But you need to be realistic. Perhaps community college would be more appropriate for your situation. Community college, when I had already been accepted to Harvard Medical School. Maybe you're right, I said with disappointment. I suppose my test scores weren't good enough for competitive programs anyway. Your scores were fine, Melody said quickly, then caught herself. I mean, I'm sure they were fine. But how would she know my scores, unless she had seen my applications? Unless she had been using my credentials? Did I ever hear back from any schools? I asked innocently. Before the accident? A few rejection letters, Victoria said smoothly. I didn't want to upset you while recovering, but none of the top programs accepted you. Another lie, another piece of evidence. As I lay in the dark that night, I felt something I hadn't experienced in either life, complete, cold certainty. I knew exactly who had betrayed me, how they had done it, and how I would make them pay. The war was about to begin. The next 3 days fell into a careful rhythm. Each morning, I played the role of the grateful, helpless patient, while Victoria and Melody performed their loving family charade. Each injection from Dr. Whitmore was countered with activated charcoal. Each evening, when the hospital grew quiet, I conducted my real work. On the 4th night, I finally accessed the hospital's internal network through a maintenance terminal I discovered during one of my midnight expeditions. The security was laughably weak. Most medical facilities prioritized patient care over cybersecurity. Within hours, I had Dr. Whitmore's complete patient records and correspondence files. What I found exceeded even my worst expectations. I wasn't his first victim. Over the past 5 years, Dr. Whitmore had treated 7 other young women from wealthy families. All had suffered mysterious accidents. All had developed inexplicable paralysis under his care. And all had signed over significant financial assets to family members during their extended hospitalizations. 3 had died. 4 others lived in long-term care facilities, still believing they were paralyzed, still trusting the doctor who visited them monthly with their medication. The pattern was always the same. Identify a target with substantial inheritance or trust funds. Arrange an accident through a trusted family member, then maintain artificial paralysis while assets were quietly transferred. Dr. Whitmore received 30% of every successful theft. Victoria wasn't his partner, she was just his latest client. I screenshot every document, every email, every financial record. Then I began tracing the money. The Winters Family Trust was real, but it was registered in the Cayman Islands under Victoria's maiden name. My mother's $2 million inheritance had been transferred there in 3 installments over the past month. My college fund, my savings, even the small jewellery collection my grandmother had left me, all liquidated and moved offshore. But they had made one crucial mistake. In their eagerness to claim everything, they had transferred assets that technically belonged to my father as well, specifically the house my parents had bought together before my mother's death. That transfer required both parents' signatures, but my father's signature on the documents was a forgery. I recognised Victoria's handwriting from years of forged permission slips and report card signatures. Financial fraud, identity theft, forgery, and now I had documented proof of everything. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Amanda Jenkins here, your mother's friend. We need to talk. Room 247 is empty tonight." I had been reaching out to my mother's contacts through encrypted messages, but I hadn't expected such a quick response. Amanda had been my mother's best friend and business partner before Mum's death. In my previous life, Victoria had told me Amanda wanted nothing to do with our family after some vague falling out. Another lie, it seemed. I waited until 2 a.m. before making my way to room 247. Amanda was there, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and the kind of no-nonsense demeanour that had made her one of the city's most successful financial advisors. "Jesus, Halena, you look exactly like your mother at your age," she said, embracing me carefully. "When I got your message, I nearly cried. I've been trying to reach you for months." "Victoria told me you didn't want to see me," I said. Amanda's expression darkened. "That woman has been blocking my calls, returning my letters unopened, and spreading lies about me to anyone who'll listen. I've been investigating her activities since your mother's funeral, but I needed proof. Tell me, can you really walk?" I demonstrated by pacing the small room. Amanda's relief was visible. "I've been building a case against Victoria for financial fraud," she said, pulling out a tablet. "But I needed someone with legal standing to file complaints. You're technically an adult, but as long as you were incapacitated, Victoria maintained legal guardianship over your affairs." "What kind of case?" "Embezzlement, fraud, forgery, the works. Your mother specifically chose me as executor of her will because she didn't trust Victoria. She left detailed instructions that her assets were to remain untouchable until your 21st birthday, with regular audits to ensure compliance. Victoria has violated every single provision." Amanda showed me documents I had never seen. My mother's actual will, not the simplified version Victoria had shown me. The real will included specific warnings about Victoria's mercenary tendencies and explicit instructions to protect my inheritance from those who would exploit tragedy for personal gain. My mother had known. Even 5 years ago, she had seen through Victoria's facade. "There's more," Amanda continued. "I've been tracking similar patterns in other cities. Dr. Whitmore isn't operating alone, he's part of a network. They target wealthy families going through transitions, divorce, death, remarriage. They identify vulnerable heirs, then systematically rob them." "How many others?" "Dozens, possibly hundreds. They've been operating for over a decade, moving between states to avoid detection. But they got greedy with your case. The amounts were too large, the transfers too obvious. I have enough evidence to bring down the entire network." "What do you need from me?" "Testimony, medical records proving the paralysis was artificial, and, most importantly, we need to catch them in the act of another transfer. According to my sources, they're planning to move the remaining assets tomorrow night. nearly $500,000 in stocks and bonds that haven't been liquidated yet. Tomorrow night, the same evening Dr. Whitmore had scheduled my final evaluation before discharge to a long-term care facility. They were planning to finish the job and disappear with everything. "I need to get back before the morning shift starts," I said. "But, Amanda, I want to do more than just stop them. I want to destroy them completely." Her smile was sharp as broken glass. "Oh, honey, by the time I'm done with them, they'll wish they'd never heard your mother's name." The next day brought a flurry of activity. Victoria arrived early with discharge paperwork and brochures for specialised care facilities, expensive institutions where I would live out my days as a comfortable prisoner. Melody had brought a wheelchair, decorated with ribbons and flowers like some twisted graduation gift. "The doctors think you'll be much happier in a place designed for people with your needs," Victoria said, spreading the brochures across my bedside table. "This facility in Colorado has beautiful mountain views and excellent staff." Colorado, 3 states away from anyone who might ask questions. "It sounds lovely," I said weakly. "But can I afford it? I know my medical bills must be enormous." "Don't worry about money, sweetheart. Your insurance covers most of it, and we've set up a trust fund to handle the rest. You'll never want for anything." A trust fund built from my own stolen inheritance. The audacity was breathtaking. Dr. Whitmore arrived that evening for my final examination, bringing with him a young man I didn't recognise. Tall, blonde, and nervous in the way that suggested he was new to whatever game they were playing. "This is Dr. Peterson," Whitmore said. "He'll be overseeing your care at the Colorado facility. I wanted him to observe your current condition for continuity of treatment." Dr. Peterson examined me with the same practiced detachment, but his hand shook slightly when he prepared the injection. A novice, then. Someone who hadn't yet learned to completely suppress his conscience. "The paralysis appears permanent," he murmured to Whitmore. "Are you certain the treatment protocol will remain effective during transport?" "Absolutely. The psychological conditioning is complete. She's fully dependent on our care now." They spoke about me as if I weren't there, as if I were already a thing rather than a person. In my previous life, such treatment had broken something fundamental in my spirit. Now it only fueled my resolve. The injection burned as always, but this time I didn't have activated charcoal to neutralize it. I needed them to believe the drugs were working perfectly, that I was completely helpless for the final phase of their plan. As the chemicals spread through my system, genuine paralysis began to set in. But I had one advantage they didn't know about. I had experienced this exact sensation dozens of times before. I knew how long it would last, how much mobility I would retain, and most importantly, how to push through the worst effects when necessary. At midnight, when the hospital settled into its quiet routine, I forced myself to move despite the drugs in my system. Every step was agony, but I made it to the window and flashed my phone's light 3 times, the signal Amanda and I had arranged. Below, in the parking lot, I saw answering flashes from 2 different vehicles. Amanda had brought help, just as promised. Now came the hardest part, waiting for them to make their move while pretending to be completely helpless. The drugs were stronger this time, and maintaining consciousness required an enormous effort. But I had died once already from underestimating these people. I wouldn't make that mistake again. At 2 a.m, Victoria and Dr. Whitmore entered my room with a wheelchair and additional sedatives. "Time to go, sweetheart," Victoria whispered. "Your new life is waiting." As they lifted me into the wheelchair, I caught a glimpse of Melody in the hallway, tears streaming down her face. But this time, I recognized them for what they really were. Tears of guilt, not grief. She knew exactly what they were doing to me, and some part of her conscience was finally rebelling. Too little, too late. They wheeled me through corridors I had memorized during my nighttime explorations, toward a service elevator that would take us to the parking garage. Dr. Peterson followed nervously, carrying a medical bag that undoubtedly contained enough drugs to keep me compliant during the long drive to Colorado. But as we reached the elevator, the lights suddenly blazed on throughout the corridor. Amanda stepped out from behind a pillar, flanked by two federal agents and a hospital security team. "Dr. Whitmore, Victoria Winters, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, medical malpractice, and about 50 other charges I'm going to enjoy watching you try to explain." The look of absolute shock on Victoria's face was worth every moment of agony I had endured. The war had begun in earnest. Dr. Whitmore dropped the medical bag, vials of sedatives scattering across the floor. Victoria's perfectly composed mask finally cracked, revealing the calculating predator beneath. "This is ridiculous," she sputtered. "Halena is my daughter. We're taking her to receive proper care." "Your stepdaughter," Agent Rodriguez corrected, stepping forward with handcuffs. "And according to the financial records we've obtained, you've been systematically stealing from her for months." I forced myself to speak, despite the drugs weighing down my tongue. "I can walk." The simple words hit them like physical blows. Victoria stumbled backward, her face draining of colour. Dr. Whitmore's professional composure finally shattered. "Impossible," he whispered. "The dosage should have kept me paralyzed permanently." I slowly stood from the wheelchair, my legs shaking but functional. "Like the 7 other girls you've destroyed?" Dr. Peterson looked between his mentor and the agents with growing horror. "7 others? Dr. Whitmore, you said she was your only patient requiring this specific treatment protocol." "Shut up, Peterson," Whitmore snapped. But the damage was done. His protégé's shock was genuine. He had been manipulated just like everyone else. Agent Morrison began reading them their rights while I leaned against the wall fighting to stay conscious. The drugs were stronger than I had anticipated, and my brief moment of strength was fading fast. "Halena, we need to get you to a real doctor," Amanda said, supporting my weight. "God knows what they've been pumping into your system." As they led Victoria away in handcuffs, she turned back to me with venom in her eyes. "You ungrateful little bitch! I gave you everything after your mother died. This is how you repay me." "Everything?" My voice was barely a whisper, but it carried in the silent corridor. "You gave me poison and stole my inheritance. You sold my future to pay for Melody's. Your mother was a weak fool who didn't deserve what she had, just like you." Agent Rodriguez jerked Victoria forward. "Save it for your lawyer, Mom." But I wasn't done. Despite the drugs coursing through my system, despite my exhaustion, I'd waited too long for this moment to let it pass quietly. "The others," I called after Whitmore as they handcuffed him. "The girls in the care facilities. They're still being poisoned, aren't they?" His silence was answer enough. "Agent Morrison, there are 4 women in long-term care facilities who believe they're paralyzed but aren't. They're still receiving regular injections from this man. They need immediate medical intervention." The agent nodded grimly. "We'll have teams dispatched within the hour." Dr. Peterson approached hesitantly. "Miss Halena, I need to know, what exactly has he been giving you? The blood work, the MRIs, everything looked consistent with spinal trauma." "Artificial neurotoxins," Amanda answered when I couldn't find the strength to speak. "We have documented proof that Dr. Whitmore has been experimenting with paralytic agents for years. The MRIs were falsified, the blood work altered. Every piece of medical evidence was manufactured." As they wheeled me to a clean room for legitimate medical care, I caught sight of Melody huddled in the waiting area. She looked smaller, somehow, diminished without her mother's protective presence. "Why?" I asked as they rolled me past her. "I never did anything to you." She looked up with red-rimmed eyes. "You had everything. The inheritance, the college acceptance, Dad's respect. Mum said it wasn't fair, that you didn't deserve it just because your mother died first. So you decided to take it." "I never wanted you to be hurt." Her voice broke. I thought we could share. I thought you'd understand eventually. You thought I'd understand you stealing my identity and leaving me to die in a hospital bed." Melody flinched as if I'd struck her. "The Harvard interview is next week. I've been preparing for months. If this all comes out, your interview is with credentials you stole from me. Everything you've achieved for the past year is built on my work, my test scores, my accomplishments." The full, cool weight of her situation seemed to hit her then. Without Victoria's protection and financial support, without my stolen credentials to rely on, she had nothing. Her entire future had been constructed from lies. "What happens to me now?" she whispered. I should have felt satisfaction at her despair. I should have savoured this moment of complete victory. But looking at her, really looking at the frightened 19-year-old girl who had been shaped by Victoria's poison, I felt only emptiness. That's not my problem anymore. The next few days passed in a blur of medical tests, legal depositions, and media interviews. The story broke nationwide. Medical fraud network exposed. Trust fund. Heiress fights back from the grave. The paralysis conspiracy. Dr. Whitmore's network unravelled completely once investigators began pulling threads. 17 victims across 8 states, millions of dollars in stolen assets, dozens of co-conspirators. The FBI task force grew larger each day as more victims came forward. My blood tests confirmed what I already knew. Massive doses of experimental neurotoxins designed to cause temporary paralysis that could be maintained indefinitely through regular injections. Dr. Chen, the neurologist overseeing my real recovery, was horrified by the sophisticated cruelty of it. "The psychological trauma alone should have been enough to keep you bedridden," she said during one of our sessions. "The fact that you not only recognised what was happening, but fought back is remarkable." "I had help," I said, thinking of my mysterious second chance. "More than I deserved." Amanda handled the financial recovery with ruthless efficiency. The Cayman Islands account was frozen, the assets traced and recovered. My inheritance would be restored in full, plus damages. Victoria's house, the one she had bought with my mother's life insurance money, would be sold to cover her legal fees. But the sweetest justice came from an unexpected source. Harvard Medical School, alerted by the FBI investigation, conducted their own inquiry into the fraudulent application submitted in my name. Melody's acceptance was revoked, her scholarship withdrawn, and she was banned from reapplying to any program in their network. The girl who had stolen my future found herself with no future at all. 3 weeks after the arrest, I stood in my father's study. My father, who had been as much a victim of Victoria's manipulation as I had been. The divorce papers were already filed. The revelation of his wife's crimes had shattered something in him, but also freed him from years of gaslighting and control. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I should have seen through her. I should have protected you." "She was very good at what she did," I replied. "None of us saw it coming the first time." He looked at me strangely. "The first time?" I smiled, touching the acceptance letter from Harvard that had arrived that morning, addressed to me this time, officially recognising my legitimate admission. "Just a figure of speech, Dad." Outside, autumn was giving way to winter, but for the first time in either of my lives, I felt warm. The war was over, I had won completely. And the best part? They never even knew I had died to learn their secrets. Justice, it turned out, was a dish best served with perfect knowledge of your enemy's weaknesses. The future stretched ahead, bright with possibilities they could no longer steal. 6 months later, I stood in the Harvard Medical School auditorium, wearing my white coat for the first time. The ceremony should have happened a year ago, but some victories are worth waiting for. In the audience, my father sat beside Amanda, both of them beaming with pride. Beside them sat an unexpected guest, Dr. Peterson, who had become a key witness in the federal case. and was now working to develop protocols for identifying victims of medical fraud. "Miss Winters!" Dean Roberts called my name, and I walked across the stage to thunderous applause. But my eyes found a different section of the audience, where 4 young women sat together. The survivors Dr. Whitmore had kept imprisoned in their own bodies for years. Rebecca, the girl who had been paralyzed for 3 years, was walking again after intensive physical therapy. Maria had regained use of her arms and was learning to paint. Jessica and Lynn were back in college, reclaiming the futures that had been stolen from them. They were here because I had insisted they be here. This wasn't just my victory, it was theirs too. After the ceremony, I found myself face to face with someone I hadn't expected to see. Melody stood at the edge of the reception area, looking thin and tired, her once perfect appearance now showing signs of real struggle. "Congratulations," she said quietly. "You deserve this. You always did." "What are you doing here?" "I wanted to apologize. Properly this time." She pulled out a folder from her warm purse. "I've been working with the federal prosecutors. These are all the documents Mum made me forge, all the time she coached me on what to say to you, all the ways she manipulated both of us." I took the folder, but didn't open it. "Why now?" "Because I've been living in a homeless shelter for 3 months, and I finally understand what it feels like to have nothing." Her voice cracked. "I know you'll never forgive me. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But I needed you to know that I'm trying to make it right." For a moment, I saw past the girl who had betrayed me to the child, who had been raised by a monster. Victoria had poisoned more than just my body. She had poisoned Melody's soul, turning her into a weapon against me. "I can't forgive you," I said honestly. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I can give you something else." I pulled out my phone and sent a quick text to Amanda. Within minutes, she appeared beside us with a business card. "This is Sarah Chen, a social worker who specializes in helping victims of emotional abuse rebuild their lives. She's expecting your call." Melody stared at the card as if it were a lifeline, which, perhaps, it was. "Why?" she whispered. "Because Victoria destroyed both of us. The difference is I got a second chance to fight back. Maybe you deserve one too." She walked away without another word, but I saw her carefully tuck the card into her wallet. "That was generous," Amanda said, watching Melody disappear into the crowd. "It was practical," I corrected. "Broken people break other people. Fixed people can build something better." The real celebration came later that evening, at a private dinner with the survivors and their families. We had formed an unexpected bond through our shared experience, and tonight felt like a reunion of warriors who had won an impossible battle. "To Halena," Rebecca raised her glass of sparkling cider, "who refused to let them bury us alive." "To second chances," I countered, "and the wisdom to use them well." As the evening wound down, Dr. Peterson approached me with a serious expression. "Halena, there's something you should know. The investigation has uncovered evidence of at least 30 more victims across the country. Some of them are still missing. The FBI wants to know if you'd consider consulting on the cases." I thought of all the young women still trapped in facilities like the one I had been destined for, still believing they were broken, still trusting the people who had broken them. "Yes," I said without hesitation, "whatever you need." The next morning brought a phone call that changed everything. My father's voice was tense when he told me to turn on the news. On the screen, a reporter stood outside a federal courthouse. "In a stunning development, Victoria Winters was found dead in her cell this morning, apparently having taken her own life rather than face trial for her crimes." I felt nothing. No relief, no sadness, no closure. Just a cold emptiness where my anger had been. But Dr. Whitmore was still alive, still fighting the charges, still believing he could manipulate his way out of consequences. His trial was scheduled for next month, and I would be the star witness. That afternoon, I received a letter with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with elegant handwriting I didn't recognise. Some souls carry justice across lifetimes. Your mother watches with pride. Use your gift wisely. I read the letter 3 times before burning it in my apartment's fireplace. Some mysteries were better left unsolved. A week later, I started my clinical rotations at Massachusetts General Hospital. My first assignment was the neurology ward, where I would work with patients suffering from paralysis and spinal injuries. My attending physician, Dr. Williams, showed me to the first room. This is Mrs. Henderson. She was in a car accident 6 months ago and has been unresponsive to treatment. Her family is beginning to lose hope. I looked down at the chart, then at the woman in the bed. Something about her stillness, about the way her family hovered anxiously nearby, reminded me of myself lying in that hospital bed. Has anyone considered the possibility that her paralysis isn't trauma-related? I asked quietly. Dr. Williams frowned. What do you mean? I mean, have you tested for artificial paralytic agents? Neurotoxins that could mimic spinal damage? His expression changed. That's oddly specific. Why would you even think of that? I smiled and picked up Mrs. Henderson's chart. Let's just say I have some experience with medical mysteries. As I began reviewing her test results, I felt the familiar sensation of pieces clicking into place. The blood work was too clean, the reflexes too consistently absent, the progression too perfectly static. I had found another victim, and I knew exactly how to save her. The war might be over, but my real work was just beginning. Armed with death's wisdom and a second chance at life, I would hunt down every last trace of the corruption that had nearly destroyed me. They had tried to bury me. They hadn't realised they were planting seeds, and now justice was blooming everywhere I walked.